And thank you for being here in the village of Buchanan at Indian Point Energy Center. And I'm proud to be joined today by Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, as well as Dr. Chris Singh, the CEO of Holtec. And I want to thank Holtec for welcoming us here today, as well as Teresa Knickerbocker, the mayor of the village of Buchanan. Standing here at Indian Point is an acute reminder of one of the most disastrous energy policy decisions Albany Democrats have made in decades. For more than 40 years, Indian Point delivered clean, reliable, carbon-free electricity to millions of people across downstate New York, supplying roughly a quarter of the region's power supply, including for New York City. When it was shut down, that power generation disappeared, but the demand was still there. And families across the Hudson Valley are opening their utility bills and asking the same question: why are energy prices going through the roof? The answer is not complicated. New York's average residential electricity price reached 27.39 cents per kilowatt hour, 59% higher than the national average. Electricity prices in New York rose 12% over the past year, increasing twice as fast as the national average and 4 times faster than inflation. And since 2019, New York's residential electricity prices have risen 58% compared to 36% nationally. The fact is this: Albany Democrats have created an absolute disaster for New York's energy grid. Their policies, from shutting down Indian Point, to banning natural gas extraction, to blocking pipelines, to blocking Dan Scammer, the natural gas power plant in Newburgh, to requiring all electric construction, electric vehicle mandates, and the passage of the disastrous CLCPA is the very reason why New Yorkers are facing an outrageous increase in utility costs. NYSERDA just last week put out a report that the average New York homeowner is going to see a $4,000 increase in utility costs per year because of these disastrous policies. Some of my Democratic colleagues in government, like Andrea Stewart-Cousins or Pete Harcum or Dana Levenberg, will stand behind a podium and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe utility costs are rising. I can't believe the PSC approved it. I can't believe the utility companies are raising prices." The reason they're raising prices is because of them. And they have the chutzpah to stand there and gaslight everybody. It's time to reverse course. It is time to actually fix the broken energy policies of this state. That means you need natural gas. It means you need nuclear power. And yes, you do need renewables. And I've been in support of renewable energy. And we need offshore wind, and we need solar panels. But an all of the above approach actually includes all of the above. And nuclear power is part of the solution. Governor Hochul last year announced that she wants to reinvest in nuclear energy, that we need new nuclear power plants upstate. The reality is, this facility right behind me can be rebuilt. This facility could generate the power that is needed for New York. If you want Micron to come to New York, if you want data centers to be built here in New York, if you want semiconductors to be built, you need power, you need energy. That requires having the capacity to generate it. The reality is there is not enough solar panels or wind turbines to generate the level of electricity that is needed in the state of New York to meet the demand. Nationwide, 70% of electricity is generated by natural gas. 70% nationwide. Nuclear power is part of the solution. And we see in the state of Michigan, a Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, is bringing a decommissioned power plant back online. Palisades is slated to open this year. And Dr. Singh and his team are working tirelessly to get it back online. There's no reason the same cannot be done here in the state of New York. And so I am proud to be here today with Secretary Wright and calling for Indian Point to be rebuilt and reopened. Hudson Valley families are being suffocated with rising energy costs because of Governor Hochul's failed and disastrous energy policies. It is time to reverse course. Now, the last thing I will say before turning it over to Secretary Wright is that this week I introduced legislation, the Economic Recovery for Nuclear Affected Communities Act. And the reason I did is because villages like Buchanan, the town of Cortland, Westchester County, and the Hen Hud School District have been severely impacted by this shutdown. Millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of tax revenue lost, crippling the local economy, burdening property taxpayers. That's why I fought so hard to lift the cap on salt. We want to provide tax relief. But this legislation would help positively affect communities like Buchanan that did their part to power New York for decades. But after the plant was closed by Andrew Cuomo, with no plan in place for the lost jobs, the lost tax revenue, and the nuclear waste that is stored on site, this legislation will provide financial relief to these communities. It will create tax incentives to attract new residents and businesses, and it will support redevelopment of former nuclear sites. To me, we have to focus on this issue comprehensively. And so long as the governor is standing in the way of redeveloping this site and rebuilding this nuclear power plant, these communities need support. But I know that the village of Buchanan and the taxpayers in this community and the ratepayers across the Hudson Valley want one thing. They want cheap, clean, reliable energy. And the best way to do that is to rebuild and reopen this plant. With that, I want to introduce our Secretary of the Department of Energy, Chris Wright.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Lawler. I think he laid out the case great. I won't repeat the many points he made, but they're spot on. I want to thank the Mayor of Buchanan. Mayor Knickerbocker is here today, fighting for her community for a decade with a simple agenda: raise wages, lower costs. In fact, that summarizes in a nutshell President Trump's agenda. He came into office and hired me as Energy Secretary, said you got to do two things. You got to lower the costs for all Americans. And the easiest way to lower costs across the board is to lower the cost of energy. And if you do that, everyone will want to invest and build factories and expand their businesses in the United States, because business and capital investment goes to where there's low cost, affordable energy. And by creating more jobs, you're going to push up wages. And the agenda: lower costs, raise wages. I got to point out a friend of mine and a partner of mine, Chris Singh, CEO of Holtec, a decades-long pioneer in the nuclear space, a broad-based company that's doing awesome stuff to help us restart nuclear power again in the United States. And as Representative Lawler said, in a few months in Michigan, the first ever restart of a nuclear power plant ever is going to happen. And it's a similar story. It was just a foolish political decision blowing with the winds of the day that we're going to shut down our nuclear power plant. And then, of course, as power prices start to skyrocket, no one wants to put a business in. Never mind, let's get it open again. And so, fortunately, it was reversed, and in a few months, a gigawatt of reliable power will be added into Michigan, which is critical. Because in the cold weather snaps we've had, that grid has been pushed to the edge. Most of the time there's spare electricity, on your lines. You know, if the sun comes out right now or the winds start blowing, it's completely irrelevant. We got lots of spare power. The power that's valuable is the power that will be there at peak demand time. The only way you can add a new data center or build the Micron semiconductor facility is if you can increase the capacity at peak demand. And you don't know when peak demand is going to be. That's what matters. And we just went through a storm. Everyone here experienced it very well, right? Fern. We had 2 weeks of very cold weather. Over 200 million Americans experienced that. The largest source of electricity in the United States by far is natural gas. The largest source of home heating in the United States is natural gas. So when it gets cold, that's your marker of how cold and how many people did it affect. We had the largest ever 1-week withdrawal from natural gas during that tropical storm Fern. We got to the edge. And what delivered at that time? Now you have increased demand for electricity. You got to produce more than you typically produce. Natural gas provided electricity rose almost 50% in the peak of the storm. And of course, it heated all the homes it was connected to. Coal power rose 24% at the peak of that power. Nuclear power was flat and rock steady, no interruption. Doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter the condition. Nuclear power is there, rain, shine, under any conditions. And for 60 years right on this location, and with a little bit of common sense and a rebuilding effort, 60 more years of 2.2+ gigawatts of power can be right here. But in that storm, what happened with wind power? Wind power declined 40% on average at peak demand time. That is normal. Peak demand is a cold, high pressure system. The air's not moving, it's really cold. And solar power, completely irrelevant as it is in northern states in the winter. You get a lot of solar power in the summer, you don't get any in the winter, or any meaningful amount. New England is the classic example. At those hours of peak demand time, that's what defines what businesses you can have in your grid, what the costs of your grid are. That's what defines everything, is what happened at peak demand. At peak demand time, the 6 states of New England, wind, solar, and batteries delivered 2% of total electricity. 2%. We got 50% more, 3 percentage points, from burning trash and wood. Oil was the #1 source of electricity in New England at the peak demand in Tropical Storm Fern. The rest of the country used to burn oil to produce electricity when my mom was in high school. We've gone to cheaper, much cheaper, cleaner, easier to use sources than oil. But why do they burn so much oil on Long Island for electricity generation? Why do they burn so much oil in New England for electricity generation? Just foolish. I mean, honestly, there's no way to describe them. Foolish energy choices. Thinking that standing in the way of pipelines is somehow fighting climate change or doing something environmentally positive. It doesn't do that at all. When you burn oil, it's not only greater greenhouse gas emissions, it's greater pollutants. You can see it in the air quality. We have fought the Trump administration since we arrived in office to bring common sense back to energy. That common sense, the nexus of foolishness and the lack of common sense in energy policy is right here in New York State, and in a similarly foolish energy state of California, where I lived for a long time. And as you can see in these plots, that's electricity prices where red is low and blue is high, and you can see the gradations in the colors. That's just numbers. That's just electricity costs. But it looks a lot like a political map, which is why we made the colors red and blue. It's not bad luck. It's not where you're located. It is choice to make electricity expensive, or choice to make electricity low cost and effective. The blue states, on average, have 50% higher electricity prices. A champion like California, they're twice the national average, and they're doing everything they can to drive it higher. Sadly, New York State is on the same trajectory. This should not be. Why should we impoverish New Yorkers by making them continually pay up for their energy costs? And no business is going to come into a state that has expensive energy today and policies guaranteed to make it more expensive in the future. Those businesses are going to go somewhere else. That's just wrong. That's wrong for New Yorkers. That's wrong for New Englanders. President Trump and my service, it's for all 50 states. It's for all Americans. I don't care what the politics are in the state. My job, my passion, is to bring low-cost, reliable energy to every American. And that choice, and the delivery of that mission is not difficult. It is politics that's in the way, not a shortage of energy sources of any kind. By building two pipelines, the Northeast Service Extender, the Nessie Pipeline, and the Constitution Pipeline that was blocked by Governor Cuomo, the same governor who shut down this power plant, and the same governor that said that greatest natural gas reserve in the world that lies under the state of Pennsylvania, a little bit in Ohio and West Virginia, and New York State, that has lowered energy costs enormously across our country. In New York, they said, nope. We don't want low-cost energy. We don't want jobs in our rural areas. We don't want more tax money. We don't want to participate in the single energy source that's driven down greenhouse gas emissions in our country more than any other country on the planet. Over half of those greenhouse gas reductions come from one thing, natural gas. Soon, natural gas will be the United States' largest export to the world. It has been an absolute energy and environmental home run for our country. Maybe New York should participate in that. And maybe New York should allow the Constitution Pipeline to be built so the 6 states in New England can dramatically lower their costs of electricity, lower their costs of home heating, and allow businesses to expand. You both lower people's costs, you raise people's wages. Energy prices are political choices. Everybody wants clean air and clean water. And my whole life, I've been very proud to see enormous progress in that regard. The Trump administration, Representative Lawler, we have fought tirelessly to continue that progress of ever cleaner air, ever cleaner water in the United States. In my home state of Colorado, our big mammals are coming back. The water, air, and wildlife have never been better in my life than today. And what's the dream we share? We want it to be even better for our kids. Even better for our kids. And with common sense policies, that's exactly what we will deliver. But let's just start thinking about humans and people instead of misunderstandings of climate change. This behind should in 5 years from now be an over 2 gigawatt generating plant that can lower lower electricity prices in New England, bring new jobs, new opportunity, bid up wages, bring more tax dollars. Who's against lower prices or higher wages? I want to hear from those in the questions. Tell us about that coalition, that Representative Lawler. We haven't met those folks yet, but apparently there's a large coalition of people that want higher energy prices and lower wages. And maybe I'll stop there. And you can see the map. I've got handouts. I have things on the storm. I'm a data nerd, so if you want to question any of the things I'm talking about, happy to engage with that. Feel free to ask the representative, myself, or this fabulous nuclear entrepreneur right next to us, Dr. Chris Singh, who is about to bring the Palisades nuclear power plant back on in Michigan, and of course is going to do this elsewhere around the world as well.